All right, welcome to the Pathless Travel Podcast. This week we feature the owner of the overhead door company of South Bend, Mishawaka, Martin Madden. Martin, thank you for joining us on the show.
Yeah, good morning, Craig. How are you?
It is the morning.
It is morning.
It is morning. It's 7 a.m. and I like it. Are you a morning person?
Absolutely. I've always been a morning person. Sometimes I think that's a superpower to be naturally a morning person.
Any routines that you get into, and how long you've been doing that?
Actually, I don't have any routines,
Oh.
but I just wake up early and get ready to take on the day. So
typically in the office around...
it depends on kind of what role I'm doing or what's going on. I'll get in the office, sometimes 5:30. Generally, like stable, steady state, things are going all right between 7:30. So
there's some days you'll get in 5:30.
There'll be stretches. So I was functioning in a different role here the last 6 months, and yeah, it was consistently 5:30 in the morning.
Wow. What time's bedtime?
That's not the superpower. So bedtime, usually I'm slowing down around 9 o'clock, and I'm asleep easily by 9:30, 10 o'clock at the latest.
Wow, that sounds glorious.
Yeah, glorious. Yeah, you must have little kids.
I do. Yeah, that's the thing. It's we get them down about 9 o'clock, and we have a good conversation, my wife and I, and then we look at each other. It's like, you just want to go to bed? It's like, yeah, sounds great.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, tell us about the company, Overhead Door Company of South Bend, Mishawaka. You've been with the company since 2011, correct?
2011, exactly.
Gotcha.
So I bought in 2011 and had a fantastic opportunity. Been here, I guess, 13 years now, and had a chance to, really get exposed to the trades, something I wasn't growing up, and make a big impact on the community.
So what do you guys do?
Well, it's all in the name, Overhead Door. We do garage doors. Overhead Door Company is my residentially oriented garage door company. I have a couple other companies as well. One does back office outsourcing, HR, accounting, marketing types of things. And then I've got a commercially oriented garage door company as well called Arkham Entry Systems.
Gotcha. Wow. And how long have you been doing all that? I mean, you've been an entrepreneur for quite some time, or the desire to be an entrepreneur for quite some time.
Yeah,
right?
the desire's always been there. So really in college, I realized, hey, I'd like to own and operate my own business. And so that seed kind of sprouted through the years, and started looking for companies to buy around 2006. Took a slight detour, worked with a local company, and then picked up and started looking again during the recession in 2009. And that's how I landed here in 2011. So, I've been at it a while.
So you're in a service-oriented business. What are some things that you guys hang your hat on to differentiate yourself from competitors, whether it be how you do it or the people that work for you, or how you select your people? What does that look like?
Yeah, I would say everything is focused on the customer, and we go to market being professional and fast. And typically people don't think about their garage doors. It's something they take for granted. They last for a really long time. And then all of a sudden, at the worst possible moment, it breaks. So in that moment of crisis, we want to be fast and we want to be professional, someone that customers can count on. And so as a result, we invest in top-notch equipment that doesn't break down, vans that aren't going to leave an oil spot in your driveway. We invest in top-notch technology that allow us to communicate with you. Hey, we're on our way. This is your technician today. And then we invest a lot in our people. We probably spend 40 to 60 hours a year of formalized continuous training. You add on another couple hours every single week of additional training, mostly around customer interactions. And so we look for employees that customers will feel comfortable with. And so we spend a lot of time talking to hundreds of candidates just to hire a handful of employees.
That piques my curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
40 to 60 hours. Is that industry standard, or is that just unique to you?
So it's becoming less unique to us. I think a lot of companies out there in the trades are professionalizing a lot more. Generally something that, hey, I can do that, and like working with my hands, and that's great. A lot of technicians in advance say, hey, I want to own my own business. But when you try to do that at scale and respond to those customers in their moment of need at the last possible moment, or at that moment of crisis, it takes a lot of extra effort to pull an organization together to support that, and training is a part of it. So, yeah, it's becoming more prevalent, but no, we were unique for a while doing that.
I've asked a few people to describe you.
Okay. I'm going to pause. Hopefully, my kids.
Brace for this.
Okay.
High character, integrity driven, empathetic, honest. And the one that I want to get into here is humble.
Okay.
And I've experienced this as well. You're just a very grounded individual, it appears, just within our interactions. Despite being the owner of a company, where does your humility come from?
Yeah, obviously, I need to credit my parents for raising me the right way. It's could get very therapeutic or philosophical here, but kind of my motto throughout life has been do the right things the right way to get the right results, and just being authentic, having integrity, it just has always been a part of my character. So without laying on the couch and being psychoanalyzed, I'm not sure that it's much more than that.
I'm sure there's people in your world that have helped shape and mold and influence you along the path. You mentioned your folks there. Anybody that comes to mind that first believed in you, and what was that feeling like? Because words matter and words are powerful, and hopefully we use words for good. And most of us can reflect upon the moment where they were used for good and it just catapulted our career or life. Anybody come to mind for you?
Yeah. So I have a pretty close relationship with my dad. He owned a business or several businesses. I guess you could say he was entrepreneurial. I think he would say he just wanted to be self-employed. And so he shared a lot with me as I was growing up about the difficulties and successes of running a business. He believed in me and treated me, and we would have conversations at a high level at a young age, which I appreciated. I would say meeting my wife in college was also very positive. As I said, the seed was planted back when I was in college to want to own and operate my own company, and she was there listening, and she could see the vision as well. And it has been a lot of great successes, but also many, many challenges along the way. And she's been there and has understood what that's entailed. So, I'd have to credit them directly for helping me get here.
So you fulfilled your dream of owning a business in, was it 2011?
Correct.
And when you actually got there and you did it, was it what you expected?
I would say yes. It was what I was expected. I'll be candid. It was a lot more challenging than what I expected. In preparation for owning a business, obviously there was saving money, but I was pretty intentional about studying accounting and finance in college, working professionally in that realm, kind of understanding that side of the business. I went to grad school, got an MBA in strategy and operations, and then I worked at a tier 1 automotive supplier in Michigan, unionized facility, and got really hands-on operational experience. Then I was with a local eye care company as an executive. So I felt like I checked off a lot of boxes and was ready for just about anything. However, being in the trades, being in this particular industry, had proven to be a lot more challenging than I expected. That being said, it's made some of the successes more sweet, I would say.
Yeah, so let's talk about the challenges of leading a company, leading people. What comes to mind, and what are some things that you do to hopefully balance that and just meet those challenges where they're at and hopefully have better outcomes on the other end.
Yeah, I'm a thinker. I'm a planner. I really try to look out and see what's going on in advance, and then try to position for that. An example of that is I consume a lot of information. I read a lot. I'm always online, reading the news or whatnot. And the COVID stuff was on my radar in early January. And it actually hit, and we shut stuff down in late March. So about mid-February, I was seeing that things were, happening in Italy and happening in the UK. And I'm like, hey, this isn't going away. We need to get out in front of this, and started planning as an executive team what would happen if it came to the U.S. And I got to tell you, my executive team was like, why are we wasting time on this? This is our busy season. This is ridiculous. I'm like, hey guys, if this is like what's going on overseas, we'll have to shut things down. We'll have to have a plan in place. And so for our industry and locally, things bounced back pretty quickly, summer of 2020. But there was a several month window there from late March until probably mid-June, where we didn't lay anyone off. We kept everyone paid. We had rolling furloughs in which everyone was compensated. And I would say that was just kind of a good example of being out front on issues that I've got a lot of friends in the industry were sideswiped for a little while.
Can you just elaborate on the things that you do to sharpen your axe, develop your knowledge, and just become a more effective leader each day?
Yeah. So I would say two things. One, I'm very curious. I mentioned I consume a lot of information, so I'm reading a lot online, but I read a lot of books, and maybe you touched on it earlier. You mentioned humility and some of those things. I'm flattered, but I would think of it more as trying to take a self-improvement orientation, to be self-aware. So I read a lot of books around leadership and sales and influence. That doesn't come naturally to me. I would say I'm more classically introverted. I process a lot more internally, but I've really tried to step outside of my comfort zone and read a lot in those areas. And I don't know, at any one time I'm probably reading 4 books.
Really?
Yeah. Yes. Well, and you've shared some recent ones with me that I got to catch up on, but
hopefully that hasn't added to the reading load, and it's manageable. Yeah, gosh, you shared a couple with me, How to Win Friends and Influence People, right?
Yep. I'm sure you were already familiar with it, but I know you always do.
I haven't read it yet. So what would be some of your top favorite books to read for leadership development?
Yeah. So, kind of as I mentioned earlier, the things that I've worked on most are more kind of in the sales or influence realm. And that's where some of my books come from.
Yeah.
How to Win Friends and Influence People, Never Split the Difference is really good. We read a book internally at the company that came back to us about 10 years ago called Leadership and Self-Deception. Excellent book about just being self-aware of who you are as a person and how you come across to other people. We all have our biases, blinders, perspectives that where we get in our own way. And it doesn't matter who you are, we have those issues. Book does a great job of kind of peeling back the layers of the onion and helping you kind of understand some of your own issues in that way.
You mentioned kind of blinders, blind spots, and I think it's critical that we work on those, and it's hard to work on those when we don't know what they are, right? How we identify those. How do you who have you put in your life, or how do you as an organization help identify maybe some blind spots in your life individually or just within your team?
Yeah. I find spouses and siblings are really good at pointing out blind spots if you're open to listening. So, perhaps you can identify with that. I think taking a humble approach and being somewhat introspective, being willing to go there and analyze yourself. Hey, boy, I could have handled that better. I'm okay. I'm fine as a person, but boy, man, I handle these situations poorly. What can I do about that? Being open to improving. I've heard it characterized different ways, having a growth mindset, being self-aware. And honestly, going back to your original question, or one of your early questions about who we hire, a lot of our recruiting process is set up around identifying people who are capable of growing. I feel like unless you're self-aware of yourself and who you are, you're not able to grow as a person.
Anything that you're working on right now for your personal growth that you'd be open to sharing?
Yeah, so I am working a lot on trying to slow my pace down. So mentioned how early I get up, how much I read. I do run at a very high RPM, and that's a lot faster than many other people. And even though we have some companies with people who are similarly motivated, maybe not everyone runs at those speeds, and it can be intimidating or overwhelming. I've come to realize. So I work on trying to slow things down, parcel things out, and regulate myself in a much more person-oriented type of way.
Any idea what's behind that high RPM, that high maybe need for achievement, the getting things done mentality, where that comes from? Dad
Boy,
influence
back
or
on
what?
back on the couch. I'm not sure. I wired that way or whatnot. Just always have had this drive to achieve more. Maybe there's an element of validation in there that I'm seeking. But yeah, I that's how I am, and it took me a while to realize that. And then buying a company where my role as an owner is naturally has power. That role has power. Being able to use that a lot more deftly. It's one thing if the owner asks you to do something. It's another thing if the owner is wound up and running at high RPMs, asks you to do something that can be pretty intimidating.
Yeah, I've had to work on that as well with just needing to move on to the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. I put behind my computer monitor the words "just slow down" in capital letters.
Okay.
And it's also allowed me to reflect and say, what's everybody's goals in this situation? Let's identify their goals before I just start to push my agenda down, because some can't just operate and want to move at the pace in which I do. So I've got to kind of just learn more about where they're at and then formulate kind of what the goal is from there. And now we push people towards it. So I can relate, man. I can absolutely relate.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to yourself? Let's go back prior to 2011, a younger you. What advice would that look like?
Yeah. So I would have, if I could get in a time machine, I would have given myself a copy of How to Win Friends and Influence People, in my teens, maybe even my early 20s. Going back to your point and slowing down, you don't get what you want unless you help other people get what they want. And I was so goal-driven, or I am so goal-driven and focused that, my personality is to push harder. And the harder you push, the more people resist. That's human nature. I react the same way in similar situations, but it took me a long time to make that realization and extrapolate that out. And so, but hey, here I am and doing well regardless.
High achiever, fast paced, working on slowing down. You achieve a lot. You've achieved a lot. What's one thing that you're most proud of as you think about whether it's your professional or personal career or life? What comes to mind?
Yeah, I would say my relationship with each of my kids. My wife and I were blessed. We had 4 kids in 5 years, And I referenced earlier, had a pretty constructive relationship with my dad. Unfortunately, my parents got divorced at a young age. I was part of a blended family. I've got different family members who are estranged, and it's pretty unfortunate all the way around. And I'm proud of the fact that I've been able to maintain relationships with my kids. Two are off at college, two are still in high school, so we've almost successfully navigated the teenage years, and I'm really blessed by that.
I'm drawn to that, the intentionality of an individual, but as a father. What are some things that you've done to be intentional with your kids to develop that relationship? Because it just doesn't happen, right?
Yeah, no, it doesn't. It doesn't. I would say two things. One, a business mentor about 10, 15 years ago had mentioned to me how he would take his kids on trips at certain milestone birthdays. And I realized, oh, well, I've got a lot of kids, and maybe we're not able to do something extravagant, but carving out special time with each kid individually. And the second thing would be accepting them for who they are as a person, not forcing, my thoughts or ideas as to who they should be on them. And, as a result, they're kind of blossomed into who they were as individuals, and the relationship was able to be strong. And every year they could count on, okay, I've got we called it Day with Dad. So we might take a day trip to Chicago. One of my sons is into sports. Andy's into money. And so when he was young, we went to the Federal Reserve in Chicago, and they've got $1 million $1 bills, and took his picture there as like a 9-year-old. And then we went to a Cubs game. One of my daughters is a thrill seeker. We went to Cedar Point for a day. Another one of my daughters is into dancing. We went to the ballet. So over the years, just accumulated a lot of fantastic one-on-one experiences with them that, I just really, really fostered the relationship. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. You're having hard conversations on a regular basis. Maybe not on a regular basis, but you have to have hard conversations, whether it be at home or in the workplace. How do you handle hard conversations? How do you approach them? And what advice would you give to somebody that's wondering this question themselves? How do I do this?
Yeah, I've been really influenced by the book Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. He was a former FBI negotiator or hostage negotiator. And I think the book's been out maybe 5 or 6 years. And he talks a lot about tactical empathy, really putting yourself in that other person's shoes. You may not agree with them. A hostage situation, you definitely don't agree with them. But you're patient with them. And in terms of how to handle those situations, he focuses on what and how questions, never a why question. Come to find out that why questions really get at someone's underlying motivations, and then they get defensive. Why did you do that? Why did you, what's going on here? And so when you ask different questions, it gets them to open up more, that you're collectively solving a problem with someone else. And I found that to be extremely effective for difficult types of conversations, coaching people up, changing direction, providing feedback. Sometimes the conversations may be a termination scenario, and not that those are ever positive, but that those can actually be the final step of a long attempt at being constructive.
Yeah, it's an outstanding book to help you not just focus on you and what you want in that conversation, and what the outcome you want it to be, but to actually be present with somebody, learn more about their perspective, and get some facts out onto the table to hopefully have a healthy discussion. It's an outstanding book. Outstanding book. Well, when you hear the title of the podcast, it is The Path Less Traveled, obviously. But when you hear that and you think about your journey, what comes to mind?
Yeah, I would say I feel like in retrospect, my path has been completely less traveled. I grew up in Indianapolis. I worked in Chicago after college, and pretty big ambitions of owning a company. I live in Elkhart. I own a garage door company in North Central Indiana that usually doesn't rate high on someone's lifetime ambitions. And as part of kind of that path and how I ended up here, happily, intentionally, there were just several different times in my career where I took the path less traveled to get here. I got an MBA. Most MBAs are engineers going to get a degree in finance so they can work in the finance industry. I was already in the finance industry, and I was trying to get a job into more operations or engineering oriented types of things. And so, garage doors, not on anyone's radar, 15 years ago, maybe not on many radars now, but it's been great. There's always opportunity if you look hard enough.
A couple final questions I've got for you. If you had a billboard, you yourself, I know you guys have billboards, but you have a billboard, your own billboard, and it can be wherever you want it to be and reach however many people you want it to reach. What would the message be? Do you have anything that comes to mind?
Yeah. So we had discussed this question before, and I had one answer, and we do a lot of marketing, and I didn't feel like that was marketed the best to the widest audience. So I reflected on that, and it was a little too, I guess, esoteric is the right word. But I would say choose positivity. And choose positivity is stuff happens to us in life, bad stuff, sometimes good stuff, but a lot of times life throws you challenges and curveballs you're not ready for. The only thing that you can choose every single time is your attitude, and you can make a choice about how you react to a certain situation, any situation. And I would say choose positivity.
I like that. That takes me back to when I was a coach at the University of Cincinnati. We brought somebody in, and this individual helped coach Urban Meyer.
Oh,
when
wow.
he was at Ohio State, and the thing that he talked about was, he said E plus R equals O. So there's going to be events in our life, some that we can control, some that we can't. And then there's going to be a response that we have on that situation. And then there's going to be the outcome. So if you want to have a great outcome, you have to have a great response.
Correct.
If you have a poor response, you have a poor outcome. So if you look at the outcome and it's not what you want, well, reflect upon what your response was. And there's ways to do that. But yeah, it's exactly what you're talking about. I think it absolutely relates.
Yeah. I've been continually amazed in life. People I know or seen from afar where reframing a situation or putting a positive spin on it completely will turn things around. And they'll leverage it almost like judo and turn it into something positive. Sometimes we talk here about how you get a better customer review when something negative happens and it's in your response to how you deal with it than if everything went perfectly to begin with. And I'm sure we can all reflect on times where we had a negative experience at a restaurant or at a store. Someone stepped in, turned it around, and you're like, wow, I love that place.
Yeah. What's one of the kindest things somebody's done for you?
Yeah. So when I was in high school, I had the opportunity to be an exchange student. And I lived in Germany for a year, my junior year of high school. And it was long story, but it was actually through a congressional scholarship type opportunity. And they just placed you with a random family. And you showed up in country and spent a month going through orientation and language classes, and then you got placed with a permanent family. So the first family I was with for this orientation period, they did it on a whim, and at the end of the month, they're like, hey, you seem like a pretty good kid. You want to stay with us the entire year? And so I reflected earlier, just some family difficulties and trauma growing up, and feeling a little bit alone and being in between and whatnot. I thought it was really kind, and I just really touched that I guess they chose me, so to speak. So I'll always reflect very fondly on that.
Well, as we wrap up here, what final thoughts do you have as it pertains to your company or leadership, your journey, anything you want to communicate, the floor is yours.
Yeah. I would say one thing that we haven't touched on, I think is really important in life in general, but also when it comes to leadership, is just perseverance. We've talked about positivity and curiosity and being self-aware. I would put perseverance up there near the top. As you cannot succeed or you won't survive if you don't grind it out sometimes. And I'm sure we can all reflect on times in our life where we didn't see a way forward, but we just kept putting one step in front of the other and persevered through some tough times and then came out better on the other end.
Yeah, it's like just stay in the game one more play.
One more play.
Just one more play and one more. Do one more rep. Yeah. So, well, thanks for sharing that nugget right there, and for doing this podcast here again for our take number 2.
My pleasure.
Well, that's it for this week's episode of the Pathless Travel Podcast with the owner of the Overhead Door Company of South Bend, Mishawaka, Martin Madden. Martin, thank you again.
Awesome. Thanks, Craig.